everybody.
Hi, Pam.
Welcome to another edition of Good Natured. And boy, do we have a lot of stuff to cover tonight. Although I have to apologize. In the email I sent out, I said we were going to be taking another look at our American hazelnut. I looked at my backpack. It's still sitting on the counter at home. So we're going to have to look at the American hazelnut again next week. That doesn't matter. We've got a whole bunch of things we're going to take a look at this evening. And why don't we go ahead and get going? Start. If you happen to read this past week's column, we had a little bit of fun with some homophones and the word eruption versus the word eruption, and what the two of them mean. What we're going to be talking tonight is the latter, eruption, and it doesn't concern volcanoes, although boy, sometime maybe would do a good-natured segment on volcanoes because they are pretty dynamic. But now tonight we're talking about eruptions and what's going on in the world of birds. Project Feeder Watch, if you're not familiar with their website, go and check it out. They are really amassing a nice set of data that goes back many years now. People send in fact, during, I believe it's in February when we have our big Feeder Watch weekend, but over the years, collecting data from people watching their bird feeders has really yielded a lot of information, and it's helped make some predictions too. On Project Feeder Watch, they talk about years where we see an influx of birds that we don't normally see at our feeders. Now, eruption can refer to other types of animals besides birds, but tonight we're just going to be sticking to birds, and specifically finches. We've got several different finch species that have shown up in this area, mainly in reaction to low seed crops up north. Now, these birds wouldn't normally migrate in a sense that we think of birds migrating. They do move around and they follow their food sources. And if you picture, say, let's just say Canada, in northern Canada, picture conifers. If there's one area that doesn't have a lot of food, but there's another area close by that does, they'll just fly over there. When they fly to the other area and there's still no food, then they've got to start spreading out farther and farther. And that's what happened this year. We started seeing quite a few different species that, not to say they've never been here before, but we don't see them in the numbers that we were seeing them this year. And we don't see them every year as regularly as we do other traditionally migrating species. Now, I remember the first time I saw a pine siskin, I kept looking at it thinking, okay, it's a finch, but it's not a finch. I actually had to get some help in trying to figure out what it is. Pine siskins, in my head, are very streaky looking, much more streaky than what you would see in an American goldfinch. Now, on the right, we have a male goldfinch, but it's in its winter plumage. So in the summertime, these guys are bright yellow. Some people call them wild canaries. They've got a little black cap on their head, but in the winter, they get quite a bit more muted. But you'll notice, even with the muted winter plumage, they are still not as deeply marked as the pine siskin. See all those streaks on the back and on the breast, and whereas the American goldfinch has clear no markings here on the breast or across the back. The other thing, there's a difference, and this is a neat clue as to how these guys make their way in terms of the food that they eat. The pine siskin has, even though it's considered a finch, it's got a much thinner bill. It's a seed-eating bill, but it's made for plucking the seeds out. If you can picture inside of a cone, that's where the seeds are held on our spruces, on our firs, on our pines, and you need to be able to reach in between the scales of those cones in order to be able to get the food out. So that thinner bill aids in that endeavor for them. The American goldfinch, they feed on a lot of wildflower seeds. In the wintertime, you can see them pecking away at echinacea, the coneflower seed heads. They'll also come to the feeder and feed on a lot of different seeds, anything from the Niger, also known as thistle seed, to our black oil sunflower seeds. But they've got a larger bill that doesn't need to pick away inside of a cone the way the pine siskins does. So it can afford to be a little bit larger. They can crack a little bit larger seed too with that sort of a bill. So just some differences if you're looking at your feeder, especially if you've got thistle feeders hung out and you think you've got a finch, but it doesn't look quite like a goldfinch. It could be that the pine siskins have arrived in your neighborhood. Now, I'm just going to kind of wing it with these two. These are a couple of photos courtesy of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. And Bob and Kathy Andrini, I know you've tried to help me sort out house finches and purple finches. And if they're not side by side like this, I really have a difficult time telling them apart. The markings, and these are both males, by the way. The purple finch has been described as having a more of a raspberry, kind of a bright pinkish cast to its head, whereas the house finch is described as having a more strawberry, sort of an orangish red cast to its red around its head. Another clue is the markings here, these sharply defined streaks underneath the wings of the house finch, whereas they're more diffuse here on the underneath the wings of the purple finch. But I tell you, I still need a whole lot more practice. I will tell you the house finch, just as with the American goldfinch and the pine siskin, the goldfinch is here year round, the pine siskins are the visitors. In this area, the house finches are here year round and the purple finches are the visitors. So I usually go with what's most common. We do see the house finches pretty frequently at feeders around here. The purple finches would be the rarer of those two species to show up. A little bit of trivia about the house finch. It is not considered a native species in Illinois, but it is a North American species. It's a bird, though, of the West, and it's been moved around kind of by us and kind of on its own. Another nickname for it is the Hollywood finch because it was common out in California. So the Hollywood finch, also known as the house finch, present year-round in the more common of these two species. But we are seeing eruptions of purple finches in some areas. So keep an eye out. See if you can sort out the two. Good luck. Then we've got a couple others that to me don't really look like anything else we have in this area. The common redpoll and also the evening grosbeak. These birds have been sighted in varying numbers. I know the common redpoll was seen along the Magic Hedge downtown there at Montrose. It's been seen up at the Chicago Botanic Garden. I don't know if they've popped up around here yet. On the evening grosbeak, you can see by the size of its bill, it's well named, the grosbeak. They've been seen, the last place I heard them popping up was out in Caneville, but they don't really look too much like other birds that we have. I suppose that the common redpoll could be, it does look like some of our streaky-breasted sparrows, but look at that fine finch bill, and then the little red cap at the front of its head. So we are, as I said, in the midst of this eruption. There's a way that you can find out when these are going to happen. This is a cool website. There was a gentleman named Ron Pittaway, and he became rather famous several years ago for being really accurate with predicting when these different species were going to erupt. And he would produce this winter finch forecast. Well, he's actually stepping down now, retiring, and he's handed it over to a gentleman whose name is going to escape me at the moment. But if you go to finchnetwork.org, check out the winter finch forecast, and it details the movements of all of these species that we just looked at, and keep an eye on it. Usually around September or so is when they issue these forecasts. So, and the eruptions, generally speaking, they're not every year. Wouldn't be good for the trees up north to have low seed crops for several successive years, but the Finch forecast will let us know what the seeds are looking like up there, and therefore what our Finch forecast is going to look like as winter sets in. It's a cool website. Check it out. Now, finches aren't the only kinds of birds that will erupt. The owls are another group that will erupt, and then they're not seed eaters, but they do rely on the populations of small rodents. Sometimes it's lemmings or voles, but when those rodents populations crashes, but when those populations crash, then we see an influx of these owls in the wintertime. In our area, it's mainly snowy owls. Now, if you happen to go up into, say, Minnesota, they will sometimes see eruptions of great gray owls, which are another species that will move in response to a lack of food. Which, that being said, I guess most species will have to move around if their food source dries up. It's just birds have the ability to do that at a greater distance because they're able to fly. So we'll have to see what our winter holds in terms of movements of snowy owls this year. One thing that is not in eruption that we are starting to see of now are movements of sandhill cranes. So this would be an example, and probably one of the last examples that we'll see this fall, of migratory species moving through the area. The fall migration is winding down, but sandhill cranes are definitely on the move. When you see flocks of what you might be tempted to think are Canada geese, but they're way, way, way up high, and they're making that characteristic sandhill crane sound. You know that these guys are on the move as well. Here at the Park District, we're not going to have one this year, thanks COVID, but in normal years, we have an employee holiday lunch, usually the second Friday in December. I started here at the Park District in 2007, and I want to say every year since then, as I've either been coming or leaving that Park District lunch, I've seen sandhill cranes on the move. So that's kind of the benchmark. Figures it has something to do with food, but that's the benchmark I use when gauging the sandhill crane migration. It does tend to wind down as we get into December, and then it will start up again. The other thing I associate with is maple sugaring. Usually in early to mid-March is when we start to see the sandhills come back. So again, not an eruption because they're not moving in response to a sudden drop in food. They're moving as part of a seasonal behavior that they do every year. So that's kind of the difference between eruptions and migrations. Now, let's go back. We're going to revisit another topic that we talked about. I think it was just last week. We talked about this little guy here. And since then, I was lucky enough to receive a photo. I still have not found this squirrel on my own, but this was actually taken by Betsy Walsh, she's one of the teachers in the 3-year-old preschool class over at Potawatomi Park, and she says that this squirrel has become almost a daily quarry for she and her students to go out and look for when they get outside. Let's zoom in on him a little bit more. You can see that it's not an albino squirrel. It's very light in color. It's got the light colored tail, but it does have pigment here around the eyes, and she said the eyes are dark. This, as we talked about last week, is called leucism, and it just is a lack of dark pigment, but not a complete lack. When it's a complete lack, then we're talking about being albino. And so this leucistic squirrel is still alive and well, and probably bugging the heck out of all the red-tailed hawks that are probably well aware of its presence over there at Potawatomi Park. Now, I thought it was kind of neat because I got this email from Betsy just over the weekend, and then today I got this. This is a leucistic opossum that's over here on the west side of St. Charles, kind of northwest of town. This was sent by one of our long-standing volunteers at Hickory Knolls, a young woman named Claudia. And her mom actually snapped this photo when they saw the opossum poking around in their backyard. And what's even more amazing is I heard from a woman via email. I actually wrote about her and her backyard last spring. She had a family of woodcocks that the woodcocks had nested in some kind of marshy duff at the corner of at the edge of their property, an area that they typically burn, and they had stopped burning it for the last year or two, and then as the duff had started to build up, I guess it was attractive to woodcocks. Anyway, Carol wrote me yesterday as well to say, guess what I saw in my yard? A white opossum. So I don't know what's going on with all this leucism in the area. It's not, yeah, I don't think it's a predictor that we're going to have a snowy winter or anything. These are genetic blips. They are inherited traits, but they are also recessive. And I'm not going to turn this into a genetics lesson because, boy, one topic I don't do well in, it's genetics. Well, there's actually several topics I don't do well in, but we're not going to get into why this is happening. We're just letting you know that it's out there and to be aware of it and keep your eyes open, because maybe you've got a white opossum or a white squirrel or a partially white squirrel in your neighborhood too. So from there, we're going to try a new feature, and it's called What's in Your Drawers. And no, we're not talking about those drawers, and we're not actually talking about a nicely organized drawer like this either. What we're talking about is what I found when I opened my kitchen drawer the other day. Now, so we've got the measuring cups over here. We've got the lighter for the grill here, and I think this is a cheese grater, and a clothespin for the chip bags, and I think some spatulas. And oh, what do we have here? It's a beaver tooth. I don't know why I put it there, or if it maybe just fell there. I don't know what happened to the rest of the beaver skull, because I do try to keep track of things like that, but I was kind of surprised to see it sitting there. And in an amazing coincidence, I got these pictures from Kathy Andrini. So we've got the beaver tooth in the kitchen drawer, and we have got the beaver activity. Kathy, I believe you said this was at Norris Woods. So what in the world are the beavers up to at this time of year? And actually, what are beavers up to anyway along the Fox River? You know, we tend to associate beavers with making dams and with building lodges. But when you think about the Fox River, you never see any beaver dams or any beaver lodges, and yet our beaver population is thriving. Well, that's because along the Fox River and rivers of similar size, the beavers, they've got plenty of food along the shoreline. In the summertime, they eat the softer herbaceous things, and then in the the colder weather months, they eat a lot of what looks like wood here, but we'll get back to that in a second. They eat the inner bark of trees. Well, these are some sizable trees, and this one especially doesn't look like it's long for being upright. With that kind of a lean, I would imagine they might be back working on that even while we're talking right now. But beavers feed on the inner bark of trees, and the softest and what I'm guessing is maybe the tastiest or maybe the most nutritious inner bark, maybe the easiest, most easily accessible inner bark is up here on the twigs. Well, beavers very, very rarely will they climb a tree. They're just not built for it. But if they can cut a tree down, then look at all the branches that they're going to have access to. So if they can get a tree to tip over, then they can harvest all these branches. And what they do then is they swim them over to an area. Forgot. Let's take a closer look at this this fine work here. And that's a lot of gnawing. And you can see that they're not actually feeding on this wood. The part that's of interest to them, and when we think about the inside of a tree, all of this stuff here, this is the heartwood. It's what gives the tree structure. And it was at one time living vascular tissue, but as the tree's gotten older, this is all kind of dried out. There's not sap flowing through this inner part of the tree. There's not water flowing through this inner part of the tree. All that activity, the xylem and the phloem tissues of the tree are out here just inside the tough outer bark. So that's where the food is. This is where the structure is. The beaver is chewing away at this in hopes of getting it to tip over. Another little benefit that the beaver enjoys when it's chewing like this is it is helping to file its teeth down. Let me see. Yeah, I do. You know what? I'm gonna stop the share for just a second here and show you another beaver skull. This one has both teeth, but a beaver's teeth have this dark enamel on the front. Their body extracts iron from the water they drink and the food they eat, and concentrates it here in the enamel. So this enamel is super hard. It's not that they don't brush their teeth. That's what kids always say. No, it's just this really hard enamel. But then look at the chisel, that fine edge on the front of the tooth. That's because the enamel doesn't wear down as quickly as the softer tooth, the dentin that's behind the enamel. So as a beaver chews, it's constantly, they need to chew to wear their teeth down, but it's also sharpening these incisors as it chews. So sometimes they'll chew just to gnaw their teeth down, but in this case, I'm pretty sure, we're gonna go back to the share again. I'm pretty sure that they are working on that, there we go, getting that tree to tip over, because this is the time of year when our local beavers are forming their food caches. So I didn't have a real good picture of a food cache, but if you find yourself in an area where there's beaver activity, and it's frankly all over the place, we have a really thriving beaver population in the Fox River Valley. If you see a lot of branches kind of submerged, now one, it could indicate, you know, that the river or the creek that you're standing by, there's just been a, you know, kind of a log jam that's occurred. But especially at this time of year, if you see freshly chewed up or chewed down branches all in a pile, you're looking at a beaver's food cache, C-A-C-H-E. And a food cache is something that's going to get the beaver through the winter. Beavers don't hibernate, and they do from time to time come out in the winter. I remember last year during a tracking class, we actually found some beaver footprints in the snow, which is kind of a cool thing. So it's not that they do not come out, but they're most suited to swimming in water. And what's our water up to in the winter? It's not really conducive to swimming. It's mostly frozen. So their mobility is a little restricted, and they could then be vulnerable to predators. So they don't like to move around a lot, but they want to make sure that they've got enough food to eat. So they pile these, in this case, sticks or branches. Sometimes if they're harvesting early enough, there might even still be some leaves left on some of these branches. And then they will pile these up inside the, just outside of the entrance to their bank den. They're not living in lodges, they're living in burrows inside the banks of the river or the creek. And they pile these things up so that they can just kind of come to the exit hole of their den, which is underwater. They don't want to have an exposed entrance to their den because and again, they could be vulnerable. Mink could get in there and grab one of the babies, or so they want to make sure that their the entrance to their bank den is underneath the water. And then they pile all this food up around it, so it's kind of like having a stash of a larder or a pantry right outside the front door. And they can go out and snack and drag stuff in, and then push the tube branches back out again. So if you see branches that are piled up like this, you're probably standing on top of where the beavers are spending the winter time. So keep an eye out for food caches as well as chewed on trees, because the beavers are, as their name, the busy as a beaver saying goes, they are really trying to get as much done as they can before the coldest weather sets in. All right, now we're gonna take a walk away from birds and mammals, and we're gonna to everybody else's favorite creature, which is the spider. Spiders, we've talked about them on and off a few times this fall, and I wanted to show you this girl. And I can't remember if we've talked about her before. This is the grass spider. The genus is Gelenopsis, but they're the ones that make those big, thick webs that are flat, and they've got a funnel at one end. You'll see them sometimes on shrubbery. They really like yews and juniper bushes. Sometimes you'll see them on the grass, which backs up their other name, grass spider. Well, this young lady decided to spin her thick funnel web in between the window and the screen in my dining room. And I saw her there pretty early on in, I would say, July or August, and it was a smallish web, and I thought, oh gosh, I don't know if that's such a good spot to be, because that window is actually fairly solid. The screen is good, and I didn't know how much food she was going to get. And you can see here, she ate a fly at some point, and she ate a little something else, and here she shed her skin, but really pickings were kind of meager there. And I really started to feel kind of bad for her as the weather started to get cold, and I thought, I wonder if there's any way or anything I could do to help with her survival. Well, then I got started thinking about my track record. Now, this was a spider that lived by my front door last year. This is, the genus is Cyclosis. It's called the trash web orb weaver. These guys are actually really cool. They're very tiny. I don't know if you can tell from this photo, but here's the spider right here on the right-hand side. What these spiders do is they spin a very intricate orb web, but then it's got this main line down the middle that the spider wraps up all the exoskeletons from all the insects that she's eaten. She wraps her shed skin there, and she will also lay her eggs there. So not exactly sure of why these spiders do this, because it actually the web ended up failing because of this all this mass in the center. We had a really windy day last September, and we're talking about September of 2019. A windy day came, and this heavy line down the middle of the web was so unwieldy, I got caught in the wind, and the whole web fell apart. And I was so sad because I'd gotten used to seeing, I call her the trash spider. I'd see her every day. I saw her in late June and all through July and August. So September comes, her web falls apart. I looked out, and it's flopping around in this great gusty wind we were having, and she is hanging on for dear life. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to try and rescue Miss Trash Spider. I'm going to see if I can bring her in, and maybe she can, I don't know, live in my house. Well, you know what? It didn't work. I screwed up. I left the container that she was in at a place where my cat could get it. He not only ate the trashy web that I tried to rescue, but he ate the trashy spider too. So I didn't do so well in that spider rescue in September of 2019. Then in October, actually early November of 2019, I was given this beautiful pumpkin spider. It was found by a woman who was raking leaves in her yard. And I thought, oh, I know these guys, once they lay their eggs, and you can see this was the egg mass that she created, and her beautiful bulbous pumpkin-like abdomen kind of deflated. She only lived another day or so after this. I tried to give her water. I offered her a little insect, and she just wasn't interested. She'd done her job. She created her egg case, and that was that. So I overwintered this egg sac. I put it out in the garage, and when springtime came, I put it out on the deck, and I was so excited because I've never found a pumpkin orb weaver in my yard before. And I thought, there's got to be a couple hundred little spiderlings in here. I am going to be set. Well, I'm not sure if it was a chipmunk or a squirrel or a bird. Something got into the container that had the egg sac in it. They ate the eggs, and suddenly I was 0 for 2. So you can understand why I had a little trepidation in trying to rescue dining room spider, as I was calling her. And I was certain, especially as this cold weather was setting in, I thought she is not going to survive. So I turned to the internet to see if I could get some encouragement, and I did. I found this really cool website. And it's called Spider Mentor. It's a woman out in Western Pennsylvania, but that's still in the Eastern United States. Western Pennsylvania and Eastern Illinois share a lot of common spider species. So I actually wrote her, and I told her what I was trying to do. And I would say within about 12 hours or so, I got a response. And we don't have to read the whole thing, but really what this was a whole lot of encouragement. She said to go for it, that a Gelenopsis actually makes a pretty good pet, that she's had success with this species indoors. She did, because I had told her about my travails with trash spider and with pumpkin spider. And she said, you know, there's a chance that dining room spider could die as well. But she gave me some advice on how to capture it. And so that's what I did. I kind of chushed her into a glass cup that I had, and I collected some leaves. I had a spare 5-gallon aquarium, and I have just been having the best time watching her. She was in my dining room window, and now she's living on my dining room table in this aquarium. And she's got then she started to spin some web, and I thought this was kind of neat too. Now these spiders, I know it looks a little bit like a wolf spider. She is pretty good size, but I think we talked about this a few weeks ago too. A wolf spider may have similar markings up here on the cephalothorax, but a wolf spider will never have these two structures at the tip of the abdomen. That's because a wolf spider does not spin much. They do have spinnerets, and they'll, females especially, they'll produce silk to create their egg sac, and a wolf spider will leave a little drag line behind it if it needs to retreat quickly back into a lair. It wants to be able to, you know, find where it came from. But it doesn't spin a web to catch food. A grass spider, though, does spin a web. It's not a sticky web in a sense that our orb weaver webs are sticky and the prey gets actually stuck on the web. This is kind of more of like a tripline kind of a web. And I was watching her. She will rest with a leg on this thin web. I actually wrote Spider Mentor. She's going to regret ever answering my first email and encouraging me to write back because I've got all kinds of questions now. I noticed that Dining Room Spider has made these thin little webs, but it's nothing near the magnitude, the thickness, or the depth of webbing that she had made in the window. And Spider Mentor said, well, it could be that she will continue to lay down web. And some of those really thick webs that we were seeing in our area back in August and early September from these spiders, she said that's actually the result of months of laying web down. This web, as I mentioned, it's not sticky, but it does move around. When an insect hits it, it does create a vibration, and that sparks the spider to come out and catch what it's going to eat. So I have quite a few, actually I have 2 different bins of feeder insects, and I'm not feeding anything right now, or I wasn't. Now I've got something that I can use these insects on. I have one species of insect called a dubia roach. They're raised pretty commonly by people who keep reptiles. They're a great food for bearded dragons, and if you've got salamanders or frogs, things that need live food like that, they're a very neat and easy to breed insect. And even though they're a cockroach, they do not have the ability to colonize in your home the way the pest species do. They need a humidity that's too high that our houses don't typically have. So anyway, long story short, I have food for this girl. And I decided to feed her, and I thought you might want to watch. I'm not going to show anything gory or anything, but this really gives you an appreciation. Now here she is. And here's the bug. And, oh, no, did she get it? No, she didn't get it. Oh, where'd it go? Oh, where is it? She's got 2 different options here. And look at what she has to go through to get a meal. I spent quite a bit of time watching her doing this, and it really gave me an appreciation for what a spider in the wild has to go through. Again, this web isn't sticky, so the spiders can, or the insects can, evade the spider pretty effectively for quite a bit of time. Let's give it another watch here. So here she had sensed the movement and the vibration, and the first insect actually gets away. And she's, where'd it go? Where'd it go? Where'd it go? Oh, wait, here's another one. And then she, there's a little bit of cat and mouse that goes on here, and she pursues it. There's a little bit of wrestling that goes on. She actually fed on that particular insect for about 3 hours. That was another interesting process. I didn't video it because I know spiders aren't everybody's thing, and I probably have belabored this point too much already, but I did want to share with you that Dining Room Spider has made it inside, and she's going to be safe now for the winter time. Now, I have quite a bit that I would like to still discuss tonight, but I'm going to go over next week's lineup, and then I'm going to turn the share off. We've got a look at bald-faced hornets because their nests are very prominent right now. They're on a lot of people's minds. I've gotten calls from people that are very, very worried about them. And we'll set the record straight on ball-faced hornets next week. I had a really interesting chat with a gentleman today, and I've got some cool photos about when a fox snake is not a fox snake. We're going to take another look at snowy owls and answer that burning question I know you've all had, is do snowy owls have tufts of feathers on the tops of their heads? I've still got that cool black light that we used on the flying squirrel a couple of weeks ago. We're going to have another segment of Does It Flow? Does It Glow? A couple emails I want to share with you, and of course, who knows what else is going to happen in the coming week. I'm going to stop the share for now. First of all, does anybody have any questions about what we've talked about so far? No?
I do.
Of course. Yay, Silvana.
So now, after I saw your picture, definitely after looking a ton on the internet, definitely we did see an evening grosbeak last week.
Awesome.
100% sure. And the amount of the red-breasted nuthatches too.
Yes, have they gone up?
My question was, because we have seen a ton of juncos, the black-eyed junco.
Okay.
Have seen, like today we saw about 8 to 10 cardinals.
Okay.
The house finches, but the amount of birds has just gone wild crazy in the past few days.
Awesome.
I've never seen so many cardinals together. So I was wondering if that eruption that you were talking about, is it just for the migrating birds, or can it be the birds that are around here that just congregated? I don't know.
They will, yes, they will move, and they've probably identified your yard as a great source of food. The goldfinches will do this too. Throughout the year, they'll, because sometimes people will say, oh my gosh, I had a ton of finches in my yard and now they're all gone. And my first question always is, well, is there a predator nearby? And if they say no, then it's just, well, yeah, then they found somebody else's yard. So your cardinals, and it could be that there is some slightly long distance, or I shouldn't say long distance, but a slightly greater distance movement of some of those cardinals. They might have been feeding on a natural food source that's gone, but now they're transitioning over to feeders, and they found your yard. So yeah, it doesn't. We won't see this in spring or summer, but fall and winter, you can see movement like that of species that are supposed to be here too.
Okay, and then my other question is, so we were really excited seeing all the birds this past week, and especially this morning and yesterday. But then we also found a Cooper hawk. And I'm like, now they're all going to be gone because this thing is in a branch. And gosh, this thing is huge.
Yeah.
And we saw a red-tailed hawk and a Cooper's hawk, and I could see it because of the blue on it. And that's how I could.
Okay.
I was that close that I could see it. Yes, and it was that close. I'm inside the house. Now I feel like I'm in a cage, and they're looking at me like, what are you doing in there? And I'm looking out, trying to look at them. I don't know, this past week has just been crazy with animals around here.
That's well. Now you had said, hadn't you said, Silvana, that you have red-breasted nuthatches? Like, do you think they might be breeding in your yard?
I don't know if they're breeding in my yard, but we have seen it for a while now. I have seen more of them lately, and it's interesting because I'm seeing how when a chickadee comes to the bird feeder, then a red-breasted nuthatch comes and kicks the chickadee away, and the white-breasted nuthatch comes and kicks the red-breasted away, and then the cardinal kind of just goes around and eats whatever they drop. And so it's like this dynamic of all the birds trying to get their turn to get whatever, and of course the squirrels will come, and then the juncos are on the floor. It's just crazy there.
Have you been able to see, because like the red-breasted nuthatch and the white, a lot of them, those smaller birds will take a seed away and stash it, and then come back for another one and stash it. They're feeding, but then they're also planning ahead in case that food source dries up. Where the cardinals don't really do that, and that might be another reason why they move around more. If they've got, if they exhaust one feeder supply, then they have to go to another. Whereas the red-breasted nuthatch, the chickadees, they spend a lot of time tucking pieces of food away.
Oh, definitely. I've seen that too. And the chickadees are the boldest ones because they will just come. We're trying, we're still going further and further closer to them. But they will come, and we have a feeder by the window, one of those clear see-through ones.
Mm-hmm.
As I'm doing the dishes, he's coming in there and looks at me, takes the seed, moves it around, looks both ways, then takes off, comes back for another one until a nuthatch comes and, kicks it away. And it's just, I'm just fascinated by the dynamic of who is going to be the one, dominating this space. And I think the finches have decided, the goldfinches and the house finches have decided to take the tall feeders, but then the house feed that you're supposed to like press it down. So the
right, that's got the weight. The
nuthatches take that one with the chickadees. So they just, and it's the same seeds. I have the same seeds in all of them. So I don't know. It just keeps.
It's so cool. We had a question for you, Silvana. Julie wanted to know if you could give us a clue as to your general neighborhood. And now the evening grosbeak, when was it that you saw that? That was over a week ago, right?
It was about a week ago. It was last week for sure. And
okay.
I actually went online and I'm like, I've never seen a bird like that. And it's so distinct, the coloring, that yellow with the black, it looks different than everything else.
Big old bill.
Yeah, and I knew that one because I know the red-breasted one, and so I remember that beak. But then the coloring was like, well, what kind of bird is that? And I really went looking and looking and looking. Now, the one that you showed in the picture today looked a little skinnier. The one that I saw was plump. Like, it looked like the feathers were all ruffled around, and there were 2 of them only.
Okay.
And by the time that I went in, it was just before it got really cold. So the time that I get in the house to get the camera out, it was gone. And I'm like, no.
Of course.
But to the question that where I saw it, I live in Campton Hills. I live by Campton Hills Road, close to the Hickory Knolls. So I'm on the other side of Campton Hill Road, but I'm really close to that area by the outer park where the pool is.
Yeah, I would say, just a little northwest of the nature center, right? Off of Campton Hills Road. And Julie noted that for feeder watch, are you familiar with, in fact, that'd be something great for you and your kids to participate in, Project Feeder Watch.
I didn't know about it. I didn't know about that. And actually I wrote down the one with the forecast too, so I can keep an eye ahead.
Yeah.
But the one thing that I was gonna say is they all go for that birch tree. All of those birds are around the birch tree.
Isn't that interesting? And what grows in the north?
Yeah.
Birch trees.
Yep, they're all around that one. It has no leaves right now, and they all hang in there, and then they come to the feeder, and then they go back. And I don't have anything fancy. I just have like a plate with water. It's one of those like, pretty, but it's not like automatic or plugged in or anything. It's just a plate. And they come and go. They never take a drink. They just go from the birch tree. They kind of look at it, fly about, and go to the feeder, and that's it.
Oh, that's wild. Well, I would say the that birch tree is kind of like a little touch of home too. And I can't remember when we talked about these guys with the red-breasted nuthatches, Savannah. Do you have pine trees or other conifers in your yard?
We do. We have some red cedars in the back, and then we have some pine trees that are my neighbors. Not in my property, but over at my neighbors, they have a whole fence of very mature trees.
Okay.
So I don't know if they hang out around there and then come to the birch tree just to hang out and eat.
Okay.
But there is some.
Okay. Cool. Awesome. Well, yeah, keep us posted.
Pam, can I ask a question about your spider?
Oh, sure.
I'm sorry. How long is that spider going to live?
She's going to live forever and ever.
No, I mean, what's their normal lifespan? Do you have any idea?
Spider Mentor told me that there have been records of grass spiders living for 2 years.
Wow.
And I'm anxious to see, Susie, because the common wisdom, and it goes all the way back to when we all read Charlotte's Web, that the spiders lay their eggs in the fall and then they die and then their babies come out in the springtime.
Right.
There's a pretty famous naturalist, as some of you I'm sure have heard of him, Bernd Heinrich. I believe he's now retired from the University of Vermont, but he has a cabin. He's written all kinds of books. Winter World and Summer World are two of my favorites, but he's got books on ravens. He's got a huge number of books that he's written. Well, I just downloaded it on my Kindle and I haven't started to read it yet, but it's called Homing. It's going to take me a minute to remember the name of it. But he has a chapter in there about the spiders on his shed at his cabin in Maine. So we're not talking about his cabin in Florida. This is in Maine, that he has observed the same spider for 4 and 5 years.
Wow.
Mark them. Yeah. So I have high hopes that she's going to hang in there for a while. And I figure even if not, maybe I'll get an egg case out of it and I'll get little baby grass.
It's really cool. That's neat you're doing that.
So yeah, until Bernd Heinrich started saying, no. The book is called The Homing Instinct, Meaning and Mystery in Animal Migration. And Bernd, his name is B-E-R-N-D as in dog, and then Heinrich for the last name. But yeah, he's got a chapter on his long-lived spiders, and I thought if they can do it there, they can do it here too. I have not seen that. The spiders in my garage don't seem to survive the winter. I call them the garage spiders, as opposed to the dining room spider, or the deck spider, or under the eave spider, or the trash spider.
The trash spider.
Yeah, they all have names. But so I don't know. I want to read how he's marking them, how he's tracking them. And I, in my email conversations with Spider Mentor, she has sounds like a lot of experience in keeping different kinds of spiders indoors. So I was a little afraid because I moved this girl in it was before we had the wind on Saturday, so sometime late last week, and I was a little afraid that bringing her indoors might cause a temperature shock or maybe a drop in humidity. Well, actually, the day I brought her in was the day my furnace went out. So there wasn't that big of a shock for her because my house was pretty cold. But as the house is warmed up, she's warmed up and she's feeding. She's eating about a roach a day. A roach every other day. And I'll keep you posted on how she does. And if we have a blessed event, I'll be sure and document that too.
Sure, great.
Miss Pam, did you say you actually are breeding those roaches?
I am. Would you like some?
Well, our praying mantis is doing really well. It has laid 3 sacks. I wanted to ask you about that because I would be expecting millions of praying mantis.
Yes.
In the future.
Yep.
Where should we put them so they don't go everywhere in my house? Because there's 3 sacks already.
Oh.
About a cricket every other day.
Okay. You know what? Crickets they're like, what, 10 cents a piece or something? And so here's the thing. Cockroaches have a reputation. And I've tried internally here at the Park District. I've written articles about them. There is a lot of different cockroaches around the world, and just a fraction of those species are considered pests. The American cockroach, the German cockroach, the Oriental cockroach, those are the ones that can wreak havoc if they get introduced, into your house or an apartment building or wherever. But most of the other roaches are somewhat tropical, and they need high temperature and high humidity in order to survive. And so these dubia roaches, I've never actually looked up where they come from, but they're commonly sold as feeding insects to be fed to other things. The thing about them is that they don't hop like crickets do. so they don't escape as regularly as crickets do, and they don't smell. I've tried keeping house crickets, for feeding purposes, and they just smell. There's a smell. There's an odor. Have you found that? They're kind of stinky.
Well, so I'm supposed to be the one taking care of the crickets. And so I don't know if it is the amazing diet that I'm putting them through and my excessive cleaning. These crickets eat so many amazing salads. They love spinach and cilantro. And I just keep on giving them fresh food, and I change it almost every other day. So when one gets out, I try to remember to also clean it up. So they don't smell that bad, or maybe I'm just getting used to it. I don't know.
Well, plus you're feeding them stuff that smells good. So yeah, I can get you some dubious. Probably want some small ones. Do you, Silvana?
Yeah, I would like to try it too, to see if
Okay.
I can just keep on going it, because the crickets is going too fast.
We'll connect, and I'll make sure I get you some. And another note from Julie that says, I've had praying mantids cases hatch inside, and you'd better store them in an enclosed area or you will have them everywhere. Put them in a fish tank with a net cover. So, and I can attest to, back before we had hickory knolls, we had, someone had brought one of those Chinese mantid egg cases to the nature room. We set it aside, kind of forgot it was there, and yeah, I think they can hold about 200 eggs per case. So if you've got 3 of them.
We have them inside a butterfly enclosure, one of those that, collapsible ones. And I'm wondering if I can actually take them off, because they're attached to the rim of the enclosure.
Oh, yeah.
And they're not very large. They're actually about maybe a half an inch. They're not very big.
Well, okay, so here, I'm going to show you here. See this little one here?
Uh-huh.
This was from a praying mantis that we raised from a baby. And she was never with a male. So she made an egg case, but there was nothing in it. So it could be, if yours aren't, like say gumball size or bigger, they might not have eggs in them. So there's that too. It's like this, I don't know if you can tell the scale on this, but
that seems a little bit bigger than the ones that we have. And then they have this distinct line in the middle.
Okay. Oh, okay.
But I don't know if this lady had anybody in her life.
The lady doesn't tell, Silvana.
we thought it was Santiago, and then it was not Santiago. So.
But I think, if you leave them, if they're in that enclosure, just leave them in there and see what happens. That they might, we also, a couple of years ago, we collected, and it was just crazy, the number of egg cases we found. Lisa O'Brien, our school programs coordinator, and I, we went to Timber Trails Park in St. Charles, and we wanted to get a few egg cases because we were going to give them to kindergarten classes so that they could watch, the development and the hatching of those eggs. Well, we thought, we'd be lucky if we each got a couple. We actually had to quit hunting them because our hands were full and our pockets were full. We each found about 15 of those egg sacs. We brought them in, and of those 15 egg cases, only one of them hatched. So I don't know if again, insects have a pretty high humidity requirement, and maybe they weren't stored properly. Maybe this temperature shock from it was winter when we collected them, and maybe that going from very cold to indoor, 68, 70 degree temperatures did something. I don't know what it was, but here we thought we were going to be buried in baby praying mantises, and there was just the one case that hatched. So there's that too. They might not all survive to hatching, but good job on raising the one that you have, and I will be in touch with you about some food. And I'll make that offer to anybody who's feeding things that eat live insects. I can be your source for a very reasonable price. Is enough. I just need to find a home for some of these guys. Anybody else? If that, looking at the clock on the wall, the clock on the wrist, and it looks like we are about out of time for tonight. So if nobody else has a question, we'll just pick up again next week where we left off tonight. All right. Great to see everybody. Really appreciate your time tonight. Next week is Thanksgiving week. We'll have a lot to be thankful for as we move to phase 3 again. Have a good week, everybody.
Thank
I'll see you
you.
soon.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, Pam.
Bye-bye.
Thanks so much.
Great to see you guys.